for those of you that aren't familiar, my name is Mike DePalma. I'm the Director of Business Development for North America here at Datto. It's kind of to set the stage as to what we're going to be talking about. Our team has run our Marketing and Development Fund program for the last 6 years, and we have very detailed analytics down to every dollar that we've spent, the type of event, the time of day, the location, the topic. So when we started putting this together, and my former colleague Eric and I started putting together the framework of what this would look like, we were using actual numbers, not the gut instinct of I thought this was going to be cool. And so to try to define a repeatable format to make these things successful. And so, there's not a silver bullet to it per se, but because it is regionalized, it's industry specific, those type of things. Those are all the different kind of factors you have to have. But we know, based on our studies and just obviously based on conversation, the reason why a lot of peer groups exist is to try to figure out a good go-to-market strategy. And it's not easy. And I talked to a lot of partners and non-partners that have said, I tried one of these live events 2 years ago. It was a lot of work with no return. I'll never do one again. To me, having seen some really, really successful events, I strongly disagree with that sentiment. I've seen a lot of partners start out and do an event where 6 people show up, and then we do another one and there's 35, and then you get a pattern going. You start doing them twice a year or whatever that is. It just does start to snowball a little bit. So we know this is a priority. It's one of the reasons why we put a lot of resources into our Marketing Development Fund program. It makes a lot more sense for us to go to market by helping to fund you folks. And it's really not about the dollars per se. We've got a big budget for it, but it's the execution of these events is what makes it successful and what makes it easier for me to go back to leadership and say, hey, we need more money here, because of the institutional knowledge and the factual based knowledge that we've had behind them. So, when we look at creating leads, some people rely heavily on events. Some people rely heavily on doing the trade show circuit, and there's a whole strategy behind how to make one of those successful. We call it kind of the Rob Ray playbook of how to work an industry event. But a lot of times, the live events come in either quarterly, once a year. They're done as, kind of client appreciation where you're bringing other folks with us. I'm joined by Jason Price, who's on camera here. He's been a member of the biz dev team for the last 5 years, but probably been at Datto for 10 or so. So Jason, just introduce yourself and, just kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. So Jason Price, Channel Development Manager. So I actually report to Mike. Congrats, Mike. Mike recently got a huge promotion, so I'm happy to be underneath him.
Put that in the minutes as well.
You can edit that point out. All right? I just try to get some brownie points.
Mike, forget the minutes. I have him recorded as saying he likes being underneath you, so we can play that on a loop also.
That recording will be playing at DattoCon this year on the big
screen. But yeah, I've been on the team for probably about 5 or 6 years, and I've been at Datto for a little over 8 years at this point. I've done, probably hundreds of different events, whether it was, helping to organize it, looking at the merits of an event and, making a decision as to whether it's worth funding. So, I'm pretty well versed in this whole arena. So hopefully I can add some value and, lead you guys on to, doing in this regard. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, Jason, it's kind of my right-hand man on the side of MDF, and we sit on a panel every Friday with our VP of sales, and all the requests that come in, we just provide feedback. We don't ultimately anymore have the ability to approve or not approve, but we're giving feedback. And if somebody says, I need $2,500 for this campaign or this event, if we decline it, it's not necessarily saying we won't give you $2,500. It's that, hey, we just know in the past sponsoring a tee box at a golf tournament is not going to get you any ROI. I would rather take that $2,500. And so Jason's been very instrumental in that. Like I said, we typically fund about 400 to 500 different MDF campaigns every single year. We probably present at 100 of them between the team of us 4. So, we've got some experience. So obviously ask away if anything's, comes up on that. But we already did a couple of these webinars to talk about what goes into putting together a good event. The planning, we usually say, start at least 60 days ahead of time if you're planning on doing an event to make it work well. To rush it and put it together, again, the numbers show that they just never work out on, it doesn't matter what kind of audience you think you're going to have. There's the recruitment aspect of it, which is a funnel based. You're going to have the existing clients you think will come, warm prospects, all the way up. So we've got some content on that. The preparation for the event, what it's going to look like, how are you sourcing the venue, those type of things. But today we're going to focus on the actual execution. So we've got through the point where you've got 25 people in the room. And normally, as an aside, when we're looking at premier kind of audiences, 35 is probably the sweet spot. When we see something that's really small, unless it's designed to be a small round table, the optics in the room aren't great if you're under 10. To that end, if you want to put together a large event, in a one single setting, and you have 100, looks great on paper, but you better be prepared to have a follow-up strategy, because a week after that event, doesn't matter how good it was, if you don't have an event strategy and a call to action from that, I've seen a lot of potential leads kind of get lost in that. And so when you take a step, and if I were to have a prep call with somebody right now who is about to put on an MDF event, right? And we've gotten to the point of, okay, here's the funding that you have to go out and find a venue. Here's, the playbook to recruit. Where's the list coming from? How are you going to get people there? Okay, we've got the registration. Let's have our prep call before the event. So we're 1 week out. We're going to have this prep call. We have to figure out the format of what this is going to look like. And it's important to keep smaller, shorter presentations. I'd like to have a lot of different viewpoints, but we would have that conversation. But again, tailored to the audience, but making sure ahead of time. You'll be surprised if you don't have that prep call, how many things can go wrong during a presentation, just with the materials wise, just with understanding the slides. Make sure somebody has a second eyes on your slide. You put all this work together and you see a couple of blatant typos, little things like that, just take away from the entire ambiance of the conversation. If there is a virtual aspect of it, one of the things that I also kind of encourage to do is maybe even have a recording of a condensed recording, 15 minutes of what you think you're going to talk about, to send out to those people who register in DOTA 10. They showed interest, they weren't able for whatever reason, and normally we see about a 30% to 40% drop off. So, if you have 50 people registered, you probably get somewhere in the 30 to 35 range. What do we do with those other folks that showed interest? Well, let's maybe have a virtual aspect of it where we can condense it down as a follow-up. Obviously, don't offer that up front, because they'll take that instead of coming live, but to have that prepared. The staff assignments is key as well, and Jason can attest to it. Jason basically ran our roadshow circuit for a couple of years. If you remember back pre-COVID, we used to go to probably 6 to 8 cities every single month, our team, and we'd put together our roadshows. And that's a lot of where this playbook came from. And we'd get 50, 60 MSPs in a room, and, having the prep call, we send out the K-bugs, the know before you go, with the little details of, okay, who's handling the badges? The badges, by the way, should always be double-sided, because it should be a 50-50 chance, but I can tell you 90% of the time it's facing the wrong way and you can't tell who you're talking to. Make it simple things like that. Jason, you've been the one who's kind of, manage that team a lot, the team that will go out and choose. So just take a pause and just talk about what staff assignments and how critical that piece of it is, even though it seems like a small aspect.
No, absolutely. And a lot of times that goes like kind of hand in hand with like the prep call, because during the prep call, you're pretty much laying down the foundation. You're clearing up any sort of misconceptions that there may be about the event, right? Everybody needs to know what time the event starts, what time, the people are going to, the guests are going to be arriving. They need to know exactly, are we getting there 2 hours before for setup purposes? It's everything is on the table at that point, and that gives you the ability to hold people accountable if they're not doing the things that they need to do, that they know they need to do, because we had that prep call. But staff assignments, everybody has a role that day, and you can't have everybody just running around, thinking that they're helping, but they're not really helping, right? They're actually taken away because there's no organization, because everybody's hands is in everything, right? So if you have one person who is going to be responsible for doing check-ins, right? That person should know that, they should understand that, and the other person who's going to make sure that's executed flawlessly. If you have one person or two people who are setting up the room, right, putting out the collateral, things of that nature, they need to understand that's their job, that's their responsibility, and you set the expectation of what you expect to see. And so on and so on for all the different roles and assignments that are going to happen on that day or prior to that day. We've had times where before we had a really good rhythm, we'd have 10 people at the event, and it just felt like chaos. But once you started to get that rhythm, once we started to get people to understand what their assignments were, it was pretty much easy, where we can run the same event with like 4 or 5 people it much more smoothly than we did before with 10 people, with everybody just pretty much doing, everything. So definitely staff assignments are going to be very, very important.
Yeah, I think too, I mean, a lot of times, we kind of joke if I'm going to an industry event, I don't necessarily want to bring a bunch of our growth reps, the folks that have a book of business and aren't going out and finding new people, because what are they going to do? They're going to find their one client and they're going to sit and talk to them. And then, we're just overwhelmed with other folks who want more information. And that's just human nature, right? Which is fine. But when you think about staff assignments, people should know you should not, what will happen a lot of times is there will be a complete table of people from that partner and they're not spread out. You're basically wasting them being there if they're not all spread out and working different tables, and understanding, well, this is my client. I definitely have to spend some time with him, but this is a big prospect, and having those conversations, because just as important as the presentation, you want to have that mingling. That also goes to if we're going to do a traditional lunch and learn or even a breakfast event. You never want to be presenting while they're eating, because all you're going to hear is click, click, clink. It's going to be very distracting. I typically would say if it's a lunch and learn, you want to do it ahead of time. You want to do your presentation and then take orders before the presentation, have the presentation, have the food brought out right afterwards. And at that point, that staff goes and disperses across the room and works different tables and does those type of things and collects leads and takes notes, simple things. When you talk about staff assignments, it's amazing how you could have a great conversation with someone and 2 days later forget exactly what it was you talked about. So it is important to take down notes. It's happened to me before, and I say, I know I had a great conversation, but I can't remember what they were using or why, we wanted to talk to them. So again, there should be a debrief scheduled to say, okay, what did we get notes and everybody we need to get notes on? So things like that, as you're executing, you want to make sure it's as smooth and as enjoyable as possible. Same thing, we talked about venue in previous sessions, but making sure that everyone has a comfortable seat to watch that presentation. Nice steakhouses are great, but the person with their back to you has got to sit like this or turn around. It could be kind of frustrating. So making sure the venue understands how to set up that room so that presentation's good there. Another big thing to make it successful, you do have to pick up the phone and call the folks that have registered, or at least send them an email or two to say, hey, I just want to confirm you're going to make it there. We want to confirm head count, those type of things. I would even tell people, what, we've got limited seating available. There's a wait list. Want to make sure you can be there. It's limited seating. That's not a lie. I mean, there is some point of limited seating. So to say that, to show some interest, like, hey, we're taking this seriously. We want to make sure that you're going to come. That networking piece fits into the staffing. But we're also going to get into that public speaking piece of it, because ultimately you're going to have this window of time to be able to present whatever it is that topic is you're presenting. And you want to make sure it resonates and that people want to act right after the event. I'll pause and answer this question. One of the best efforts or campaigns to invest in per dollar based on our data. Per dollar, I would still say the traditional events. Now, per dollar, and I'll tell you success-wise, breakfast events tend to be better than lunch events. Does kind of vary region to region. Obviously, in New York City, you almost have to do a breakfast event because nobody wants to move around in Manhattan, but the breakfast events just per the numbers have not only produced more ROI, but there's been a smaller drop off from the amount of registrants to the amount of people who show up. Because I think, people will sign up for a lunch and learn, they get to the office, they're, putting out fires, and next thing they know, it's 11:30 and they miss it. Whereas in a breakfast event, they're going to want to be there for the right reasons. You're not bribing them with a steak. You're saying, okay, we're going to have a nice breakfast, but we're going to have this conversation. It's going to be networking. But they also plan on starting their day there. They know they've blocked off in their calendar that I'm not going to be in the office until 10:30. There's nothing that's going to come up and prevent them. And it's less costly. I mean, a lot of times you could do those breakfast events at a hotel conference room and they're still comfortable. Golf courses are great if they have them. I've done a bunch of them there because it's a nice, comfortable setting. People might take that advantage of that and say, I have a meeting all day and go play golf if they want. But dollar per dollar, that's good. The other piece is beyond just planning an event, if you are doing an industry event, I would say make sure you have a speaking spot. Make sure you get the list. Ask for the list, even if you pay extra for it, of all the attendees. Yeah, you want to collect business cards, but that's a big piece of it. And a lot of times they're not crazy expensive. We were just talking about expenses for Datto, but it does vary so much. Sometimes a sponsorship would look like $25,000 to sponsor this industry event, and then you go to one that looks similar and it's $1,500. But if you ever want bounce those ideas. We've got, I could tell you what to look for in those contracts for sure. But I would say dollar per dollar, those breakfast events work best. But we've done them all. We've done the wine tasting. We've done those type of things. But I don't know, Jason, would you kind of agree with that?
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, breakfast events by far like the best. Once again, people have to make a lot of decisions in the morning, right? They have to drop off their kids at school. They have to do this. They have to do that, and it's usually easier for them to be able to knock out the things they need to do, go directly to the breakfast event, and then from there go back to work or go to work. So, huge amounts of success with that. I did want to double back and go to the confirming registrations piece again. Because another point I want to bring up is, or 2 points is, one is that like if you have, 50 registrants and you set up a room for 50 people, but the day prior you realize only 10 people are confirmed that that are going to be coming, you now have the ability to pivot and actually change the format of that room. So it's not an awkward experience, right? The worst thing to do is to expect 50 people. You get there and there's 10 people scattered around this huge room, right? The other thing is going to be even like from a cost perspective, you might be able to actually bring down whatever cost associated with that event is by actually making that adjustment. So typically, if you're doing an event, you can have a minimum head count that you're going to be paying for, and then you pay for any additional, beyond that. From a standpoint of being able to not have as much waste from a food standpoint, you don't want the restaurant cooking 50 steaks. It's only going to be 10 people there, nor do you want to be paying for 50 steaks, right? And you may have an opportunity to reach out to the restaurant and say, hey, you know what? It's going to be more around 20, right? And you can actually save money and increase your ROI for the same event by just doing that one quick thing in terms of confirming the registrations.
And it could also alter the style of your presentation. If it's really small, you might not want to stand up there and do a full PowerPoint. You might want to say, hey, let's do this as a roundtable. Let's make it more conversational. Another thing with the minimum spend, and we had another colleague who did this, where there was a minimum spend and there just wasn't enough people there. And the restaurant says, okay, you have to spend $1,000. So he let the restaurant know ahead and he bought a bottle of wine for everybody as a giveaway. And it seemed very nice, but they had to spend the money. That's a good way to do it. So again, the flexibility is key here. You might need to switch that around a little bit. So that's a good point, Jason. Moving on to the presentation. This is essentially what our team does. We probably do hundreds of these presentations. And, it was interesting. Jason's got a different kind of path to where he got here. He started in tech support, moved over to sales, moved up here. And so I'll let you speak for yourself, Jason. Before you joined the team, you didn't really have much public speaking experience at all, correct?
At all. I hated it. It was the biggest fear ever. Voice trembling, knees shaky. It was bad. But just being on this team, being confident in knowing that I know everything from a tech perspective, from a sales perspective, from a business development perspective, I've improved, tremendously over the last couple of years. I'm the type of person who I have to keep rehearsing and have people give me feedback. Whereas Mike can record himself and listen to himself over and over again. I don't want to hear myself talk. I think my voice is like, nails on the chalkboard is like the worst thing for me, but me getting feedback, it was beneficial to me. Actually, when I started, I'd have my parents come in to the Datto headquarters. And we had this huge auditorium, and I would do the presentation in front of them and just practice. And it really worked. I mean, over the years, just have gotten progressively better.
Yeah, and I think when you think of rehearsals, a couple things to it. It is honestly standing up and saying the presentation out loud. It's not just reading through it and say, okay, took some notes. I know what I'm going to do. You have to actually get the words out of your mouth. And also the reason why you have to do that, because one of the biggest pitfalls is people don't understand timing. And you will say, I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. And you talk for 40 minutes. I've had it happen to me where we prep, we're going to do a 60-minute presentation, 30 minutes. By the time it gets to me, I have 8 minutes left. So time it. I have a clicker that has a timer on it. So I know we got 16 minutes left till it's 20 up, So I keep that and it'll buzz in my hand. I used to sit there in my car and try to do my presentation without even looking at the slides. And I knew I would time it out. And I'd break it up into little sections. That's where, for me personally, the hardest thing is that opener. I don't know why the introductions is always the most awkward part when you're introducing yourself. But say the words out loud. Actually say it, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I could do an intro. I know how to introduce myself. I know how to introduce my company. Say the words out loud. If it looks awkward, you could be standing. I used to stand in Rob Ray's office and time my stuff, and I'd just be walking around his office talking out loud. It definitely helps. And it really helps to get your cadence down to understand that this is a 15-minute piece. Like once you do a bunch of them, you kind of get the sense of it. But the timing aspect is critical because you do want these things to be not just a data dump. And so you got to understand that if I'm going to do a presentation, typically, I would say you want to have it no longer than 45 minutes at one of these events. Unless we're talking, I mean, unless it's a full summit type of agenda and there's an agenda with different topics, that's one thing. But for the most part, these are going to be, here's what I'm going to talk about today. And I need to get this all out in 30 to 45 minutes because you will start to lose attention. I could tell you on the webinar side of things, it's a little bit different, but we know the drop-off point's about 36 minutes. After 36 minutes, people start to drop off because we get those reports. Pretty much universal. And so I would think that's just the way our brains are trained right now. Giving a good event is to give them the high-level stuff or whatever that topic is you want to talk about. That being said, taking your time needs to fit into this, because you want to make sure that you're pausing and letting people talk about it. And everybody's so paranoid about, oh, I'm going to say too much, or I'm going to say like too much. Don't get caught up in that. If you say these things out loud, you will do that less, but nobody's going to notice if you take a pause. If it's a 1-second pause to you when you're on stage, seems like an eternity. In reality, to the audience, it's nothing. So take your time. Make sure you're hitting the points that you want to hit. That's why timing is critical, because I've been burned by it before too, where I have a nice closing slide where we're going to talk about marketing materials and all this, and I look down and I didn't give myself enough time. And you're at like an ESC event, they literally kick you off the stage. If it's Channel Pro, Joel will come up on stage, drag you off, and now all of a sudden you've wasted what was a good closer because you didn't time that out. So you want to take the time during the points that you need to hit. Steve, you wanted to add something?
As I was listening, yeah, thanks, Mike. As I was listening, first off to Jason, because I think I met Jason as he started doing some of the public events. So I put it in the chat, but I can attest you've come a long way. Like you now you're comfortable. You can see it right away. You're a different person. But for everybody else, generally speaking, we have someone in our companies doing this that isn't polished at doing it, especially if we're doing anything technical. We're bringing a technical resource up. So give them some help. Cheat along the way. I can tell you that when I'm on stage, I look for a handful of people throughout different parts of the audience to make eye contact with. And once I spot them and realize what they're wearing, I can easily move around the stage, make eye contact with them. They'll always nod their head to you once you do it, because it's generally someone you know. But be a good person in the audience for others. So if someone from your company is presenting, or even a guest is coming in and presenting, sit somewhere where you can be seen. And as soon as they look your way, just nod your head. I can't tell you how many people have come off stage and said to me, thank you so much for being so engaged in what I was saying. By the way, I might have been bored out of my mind, but I will still go, yeah, this is great. Because I know what it's like to be up there and see all, straight-faced people, deadpan. So try and work both sides of that as well.
So my boss, my big boss, or the person who runs business development, Rob Ray, he's probably one of the best public speakers I've ever heard. And anytime he's around and, I have to present, I just get all flustered and nervous because I have one of the people I revere as like the best looking at me and feeling like he's judging me. And I'd be like, man, I messed up. He said, no, you stumbled. He said, the way he puts it is that you just made yourself a human. He said, the minute you go up there, you're too perfect and you don't, and you don't stutter and you don't, get your thoughts jumbled. People look at you as like, oh, you're just a robot. You're just a computer. But the minute you start showing that you can make errors as well and recover from those errors and keep it going and keep being engaging, people actually respect and are more engaged with you at that point. So I think about that all the time. And so like that has lessened my, trepidation in terms of speaking in front of people, right? We're all just humans. And, you get to see me in my normal element of being a human. So
I could tell you two of the most memorable presentations, and Jason was at both of them, happened with a big mistake in them. We were at DattoCon 2017. There's a guy, Matt Scully, who's been our team. Now he's the channel chief over at Mail Protector. He was his first time presenting, and he was very nervous in the green room. And he comes out, and it was me, Rob, Eric Torres, and him had the panel, and we all got to speak. And his first thing, he got up and he hit the wrong button, and the screen went black. And you could see he kind of panicked, but in the moment he kind of laughed about it and joked around about it, and then got back up and running. And people came up afterwards and thought that he did that on purpose just to get the crowd's attention. Rob Ray at the Build It event last year in Jersey City had a big keynote speech, and 5 minutes in, he realized he was looking at the wrong slides. And it was like he broke it down. He goes, have I been talking about the wrong slides here? And they laughed, and he goes, I'm looking at the confidence monitor, and it was all this stuff. Rob can pull that off, but it just goes to show you that it was the humanize it, to Jason's point. It does go a long way. So, I think that goes into the way to present something like this, in my opinion, and what we always try to do, whether it's an industry event or an MDF event, is tell whatever your message is, tell it through a story. People remember stories. It also helps you because if you could just remember the parts of the story, you never get stuck with forgetting a word. I see people try to memorize word for word their notes. And now if you get stuck on a word, it's going to throw you off for the entire piece. If you remember telling stories, if I ask you, tell me your favorite Little League story, and you tell it, you can tell it. You feel comfortable doing that. If I ask you, tell me the story about when you saved your client, I'm sure everyone here can tell me that story if I'm sitting at the bar. It should be that same process, because even if you stumble over a word here or there, the story is the story, right? Mm-hmm. So I always look at whatever that topic is, how do I tell this story? Not only because it's going to be easier for me to do, it's also going to be more digestible, and people will remember it more. They're going to be more entertained by that, and they're going to have some takeaways. You remember the moral of a story, those type of things. And ultimately, that's kind of how the human brain works. So you can go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey. They're basically, every story is the same. And we're going to set the stage, and here's what it is. I'm going to teach you a little bit about the characters. Then, oh my God, the world is ending. And then, okay, there's heroes to save the day and no thing. It's the same thing. If you're going to tell me, let's do a ransomware presentation, it's going to be, all right, what is ransomware? Oh, look at all these stories about ransomware and how you need to be protected. And oh, by the way, here's the things that our partner can do to protect you. It's that same mentality. It doesn't matter what kind of product or offering or just your managed services in general. That's kind of the flow of things. And when you talk about compelling stories, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, we have a robust team with a lot of slides and a big library of slides, but so do a lot of vendors. There's a lot of vendors, especially now, they're understanding, they're putting a lot of resource in it. Leverage them. Even if it's not on a topic, you could be doing something on a topic that's not Datto related. I probably still have stories I could share with you. You don't have to just start Googling from scratch. We also keep in a running archive. We have a Slack channel with just people from our team with just ransomware stories. And if we see something, we put it in there. And that way, if I know I'm going to, next week, I got to go present to a bunch of manufacturing organizations for a partner, I'm going to just scroll through that and find stories in the manufacturing space and be able to pull that. I'm not starting from scratch. It was compelling enough for somebody shared it. It's really easy. And steal stories. I steal stats that I hear from the FBI, from the Department of Homeland Security, from other cybersecurity companies. If it's interesting to you and you remembered it, it will be interesting to somebody else. There's no shame in stealing really good facts and really good stories. Sit with cyber insurance companies, has a lot of really good stories, and I like stealing those because they're third party justified, that type of thing. Jay, you could attest to that.
No, absolutely. And I was going to even go further. It's not just about stealing from the vendors, but if you're in these peer groups, you can steal from your peers. A lot of times you guys are in non-competing markets, right? And if you have like a great idea or great execution, or you had a good event here, why not share that with people in your group, right? You don't have to start from scratch. You can just send over a template and be able to recreate what they did, and so it's about just using those resources that you have, right? Whether it be vendor, whether it be your peers. There's a lot of stuff out there ready for you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things I always tell like a newer partner is, what peer group are you part of? Because you have to be part of a peer group, I think, to succeed. And one of those reasons is just that open sharing of ideas. But as we look through what that kind of looks like, telling the story, if when we get assigned a new something new, right? We release SaaS Defense, right? And marketing comes up with their slides, and they're always super data heavy and stats and all its specs and all those different types of things. And those are great. A lot of times we've got 5 to 10 minutes up on stage to present it. So instead, I usually sit with Jason. Jason's an engineer. I'll usually say, first and foremost, can you translate all this stuff for me and break it down, give me the cliff notes because I don't understand some of it. I'm not an engineer. And then we say, okay, what are the points that are going to stick out? What are the things the 3 things that everybody there has to hit on? And every slide you need to be able to justify that slide as you're putting your slide deck together. A lot of times people will just want to, I got to talk about this, I got to talk about this. And it's, all the little things. Ultimately, especially if you're talking to a bunch of net new prospects, you need them to just take away a couple of things. And every slide and everything you say needs to be ultimately tied back to that. And so just like anything else, you take Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars nerd. Well, how did the Star Wars story start? All right, let's build the stage. Why should you care about Luke Skywalker? Why should you care about his friends and all these type of things? So now you're hooked. That's where, again, just use ransomware as an example. Start talking about ransomware and talking about what it is and why it's interesting and why we've seen it grow and some of the stats. And then all of a sudden, the tension's building. Okay, this is this big enemy that we're up against. How are we ever going to compete with them? And it's the doomsday, right? College just shut down last week out in Illinois because they got hit with ransomware and weren't able to recover during admissions time. Colonial Pipeline, all these different types of things. City of Baltimore, have those stories and say, look, the world is crashing. This is the cyber insurance space. I'll give you a stat that I stole from, it was IT Nation Secure last year. One of the presenters had a stat that said the cyber criminal space, it would be the 9th largest economy in the world. It'd be ahead of Canada and Brazil with the amount of money it generates. That's a stat that I remember. It's a stat that I steal. I used it in my presentation this morning. That I did for a webinar. So, okay, here it is. Okay, this is what happens. Well, the good news is, here's the way you could protect yourself. And here's my story. And as an MSP, here's what I'm doing. And, it's ever evolving. And you're going to have people saying, every time I talk to this person, they're trying to sell me something new. And if you have the prescriptive mentality, it's easy to say, well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't telling you about these new tools out there because the criminal space is evolving. This is the part right here, the most important part that you should feel comfortable about once you believe in what it is you're talking about. And again, instead of going through, this is a good time to give a case study of somebody that you studied, that you worked with and saved the day. Some of the tools that you have, you don't have to get into the minutia of here's all the vendors that make up my package. Right now, our big thing is we're kind of positioning the NIST framework. So identify, protect, detect, respond, and then recover. And what are you doing as an MSP to make sure that loop is as quick as possible to get you back up into recovery? So this is the real crux of what you're trying to get at. So you've set the stage, you've told them the what, the why you need to do it because of all of this, and then the how are you going to do it. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to save the day. And there could be multiple kind of peaks and valleys here because you might be talking about various different things. But again, they have to understand what it is, why it's important, why it impacts them specifically. Why are you talking to me about this? And then how are you going to go out and save the day on that? That's how it works. And every story, every movie is the same story. The good guys win at the end, right? I'm going to help you we're the good guys. We're going to help you win. That's usually my mentality. One of the things about our team, so it's me, Rob, Jason, Desiree, you might know, you couldn't have 4 different styles of presentations than the 4 of us, right? And so we have the ability to kind of tweak our decks. If Jason's putting a deck together, he's going to come at it a lot differently than I am. Des is going to have it a lot different. And then Rob just steals our stuff. He doesn't create his own stuff. So Jason, is that kind of your mentality? You get a topic that we got to hit up. That's how I address it. When you're putting your deck together, is that how you do it? Or at least how you concept you could do it? I want to speak for you.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. I would say that the decks that I present on, it is probably about 75 to 80%, like more so stories and kind of like making people relate on that level, and probably like less than 15 to 20% of talking about whatever product or service or feature or whatever that I'm offering, because people aren't interested in that and it's boring. And they zone out. They don't care about zeros and ones and speeds and feeds. They just care about the story and what can you do to actually make their life easier at the end of the day. And stories get you there. Features and functions and all that stuff that don't really do that.
Right. And I know a lot of partners will say, we got to do a demo. I want an engineer there to do a demo. And there's a right and a wrong way to do it. A regular demo is kind of boring. The only kind of demos we used to, if anybody saw, we used to do the big disaster demos. We used to do them at DattoCon, we'd blow up a device. We took that on the road and at a lot of MDF events, especially 2018 and 2019, we'd bring out a laptop, I'd start my presentation, call somebody up from the audience, hand them a hammer, and let them smash a laptop. Who wouldn't want to smash a laptop? And then we fail over to the Datto, spin up. The reason why that demo worked was because it wasn't into the why, how it's all happening and ZFS and all that stuff. It's a story that they're going to remember. If they didn't remember anything else, they remember that they saw some guy come out to their place and they were doing a presentation on whatever they were talking about. Somebody smashed that laptop, and I know that within 30 seconds he had that presentation back up through a virtual machine. That is a story in and of itself. So if you're going to do the demo, tell it as a story. Tell us that this is exactly what it'll look like for you. If you're talking about your RMM or whatever, here's how I'm jumping in and addressing this. Whatever it could be in your networking side, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be data specific, but think of the demo as a story because that's what they're going to remember. And that's why, and I have this fight with marketing. I love putting bullets. It's like it's so much data. And I love it. It's good data, but then they see what the final product, and I pull a bunch of it out and consolidate it. And what we need to talk about that. Well, I talked about it. I just didn't need to have it on the screen. If the screen is super word heavy, everybody's just looking at your screen. Also, I really don't like it when they want the presentation in PDF and hand it out ahead of time. I can't stand that because now you're looking, and other like industry events will make us do it. And now you're looking ahead, you're looking at it, you're not looking at me. And you're just looking at, it's just a data dump. The reducing the amount of bullets by nature, I don't care how many presentations you have. If you have a screen with all bullets, you're going to wind up looking up there and clicking on it and basically just repeating whatever it says. Like most people would look at this and they'd start the slide off with, okay, on to stories and bullets. Well, it makes your life easier, keeps your audience looking at you. That is what's the point if you're just going to say exactly what's on the screen, right? So the bullets are up there, quick, short. Like it said, it does make your life easier because you're not remembering thing word for word. If it's a story as opposed to a bullet, if you're off on a stat by a point or two, it's not a huge deal. They're looking at you. They're not staring at the screen. That's why I like a lot of pictures. You see the picture, this is what I'm talking about. And then I want you looking at me because I'm telling you the story they're going to remember. And it also, again, keeps you looking at the audience. And it's something that they're going to remember. They're going to remember the story. And ultimately, the goal of all of this is obviously to bring on a partner. But the best thing is for them to go to a dinner party last night and say, you know what I learned today? Now they become a referral source to you, not inadvertently, because they want to be the smart guy at the party. Hey, you know what really happened with that pipeline attack? Here's what happened. And I know I got the cliff notes from this event I went to today. That's the ultimate goal. If they can go and look at you and say, okay, in 30 seconds, talk about what I just talked about. They should be able to do that. And storytelling is a better format, in my opinion, to be able to do that. The biggest thing, we'll close with this and we'll have some time for questions, but the biggest thing you need to do, you just spent all this time preparing for the event, put together a kick-ass presentation, you delivered it really well, your team was out working the floor, you got all of these potential lists. What is the call to action? What do I do with this data? What do I do with this pool? There's a couple ways to do it. I like having a survey at the end. We need the feedback. You do a survey, and then obviously at the bottom is like, check off the box of what you want more information on. Can I give you a free assessment? I put the little asterisk next to free because they don't have to know it's free. A lot of partners obviously do charge to come in and do an assessment. But to say, hey, this is normally $500 for me to come out and do this assessment, but anybody that joins here today, I'd be willing to come out and do a free assessment. Obviously, those assessments, however you structure them, are a gold mine. You find out gap analysis and say, here's the gap, here's what I need to solve. So that is the number one call to action. I used to I partnered a bunch with ID Agent, and I would say, just do it. You get a free dark web scan, right? Something like that. And I'm not promoting them in particular. I'm just saying something like that you can give them that's going to give you a hook.
Put this in Linwood, please.
What's that? Oh. And then the other piece, you could just say, I want to do cyber training, right? This is why I did this event. I wanted to train you folks as to what's out there. Let me come in and do a sales training for your team. You get your foot in the door with that call to action of, I have to be speaking with this person within the next 7 days or I probably have lost them. So what is that call to action? It also gives you the ability to go, do a debrief of this, and you say, okay, our call to action was to set up network assessments. We had 25 people there. Only 3 of them signed up Doesn't mean the event was a complete failure. It's let's learn from it. What did we do differently? What was was it our messaging? Was it the audience that we had? We didn't have decision makers there. Whatever it is, now you can go back and analyze the why it might have failed. Or maybe it's overwhelmingly good and everybody signs up for one. And you look back, well then, hey, let's repeat that, right? That's what's working. So again, even if you're a non-partner, we're here to help. You can send an email to tools@datto.com. It's got some of these materials, some of the things you could use, but I'm also open to have conversations. The one cool thing about our team is we're not quota bearing. So I'm willing to have conversations with anybody because I think it's good for the channel. And then my only plug is we've got DattoCon coming up. So please sign up for that September 11th in DC. But we got some time left. Anybody want to have any questions?
Will there be a recording of this, Michael?
Yes, Ron, there is a recording of it, and we'll make it available to everybody after.
Thank you. I was tardy, and I'm sorry for butting in like that. Forgot my mute button.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
So who's got an event planned coming up? I know Sean Fox and Kevin have one planned. Yep. Where are you at in the planning stages right now?
So we have booked the venue and figured out, all the details there with the hotel and the conference center and stuff. I think we've gotten those contracts mostly finalized. So, and then we've also reached out and started booking vendor subject matter experts who are going to come in and speak about various things. So I think our next step is to really kind of corral that and figure out what is the message across these different experts that we're going to try and drive home to our clients and leads in the event.
Yeah, to what you were saying earlier about the PowerPoint presentations and going down that road, this is primarily geared towards our current clients and prospects, and they're asking a lot of questions. And if we start getting into technical about, hey, don't leave these ports open or this and that, we're going to lose them within the first 5 minutes. So we're getting more qualified speakers to actually come in there and give real life instances, real life stories behind why you need certain aspects of that tech stack, and kind of do it in layman's terms for our clients and prospects to not talk over their head. So that is right now. So everything's all finalized. We are just working on the topics and brainstorming we have all the meetings set up to brainstorm with all the presenters. We have one panel set up for an industry specific conversation. So it's really just kind of fine tuning what we're going to be talking about on stage and what people are going to be, what our vendors are going to be presenting.
Yeah, and that's a big opportunity. I mean, it's good when you get those, I want a specific technical question, and then because you say, look, let's take that offline, it gives you that excuse to follow up and have a one-on-one meeting. That's one of the things that I don't like about a full demo is because you're showing all of your cards. And then it's, okay, we'll think about it and we'll get back to you. Like you want there to be something. You want to dangle the carrot of, if you really want to deep dive, I can't present to 100 people and tell you the same thing because everybody's environment's different. A lot of times these have to be one-on-one conversations. Well, now, boom, you have your follow-up appointment set, right? Yep. We do that, and we get chats in the box. I said, well, I'd want to get you on a call with an engineer because I know that there's a real opportunity there. So,
yeah,
you guys know how many people you're expecting for this event?
A minimum of 100. We have the ability with the attrition for the rooms and extra room if we do go beyond that, and the ability to add food. And this was a good idea for me when I had a couple beers in me and I wanted to do an event because I was having a hard time communicating to my clients. And next year I will be hiring an event planner to do all this for me. So no, but it's it was a good learning experience to understand the dynamics of the event and as a scope, and just dealing with, the little things that you don't think about, how much food do you need? Are they going to be sitting in the same room eating, or you want them to go out to a different area? There's all these little things that the AV, the audio visual, all that stuff, it's great in theory, but when you starting getting granular with it, it's really where it's very time consuming, and the planning has to be done accordingly. And, good, I've made it past that. Now I'm on to the fun part of just talking about the topics and assigning people, like you guys are saying, assigning people from our company to make sure that they're not just standing there twiddling their thumbs. They're actually being productive the day of the event and helping out where needed.
You have
Yeah,
so
one
many
of
challenges, like even with it being that size of event and having different rooms and things of that nature, you're dealing with everybody still has to move as one, right? If break is at 1:15, everybody needs to be exiting that room at 1:15, and they need to be back in the next room at 1:30. So there's a lot of different things you have to juggle with that. So you'll probably have a lot of meetings just to make sure that everybody is truly on board and truly understands that, right? You can't have, people, running long or running short or,
Yes.
so that's going to be big. And I'm happy that you're taking a look at all the different vendors and making sure that there's a good talk track, but nobody's overstepping or overlapping. There's ones where I've been to, and there's a couple other vendors. And by the time I went on stage, they heard everything I had to say already.
yeah, I'll just have
It's
some
awkward.
slides. Yeah, same stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Exactly.
pretty cool.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
other
that-
thing I would say with an event like that, it's really, I would honestly go as detailed as walk the path of what somebody would be doing, especially if they're going to different rooms, like physically walk it. Say, we'll talk, it'll take me 3 minutes to walk from here to here. Here's where I'm going to go make a phone call. I got to be back. At this point, is this realistic of me to ask you? Also, when that with staffing, you have to have somebody who's good at herding the cats and getting them back in. That is critical. You don't want to lose them because they got, like, all right, let's come on, we're going to come back in. So that's critical. Those are, when you could pull an event off like that, and I've seen some MSPs be really successful with a large summit style, those are the best. It's just there's very few partners with the pool that could do that, because even if you're bringing a lot of your existing customers that have your entire stack, you cannot sell them anything more. To give them that peace of mind, obviously there's stickiness, but 2/3 of your business in the channel comes from referrals. This will now be a referral source for you if they're able to figure out a couple stats so they could just go tell their accountant, hey, did you know this? Here, I'm working with these guys. I mean, again, logistically, little things. And we've got the best marketing team in the world. So I don't want you to say that I'm talking bad about our marketing team, but they just took over our road shows. We used to run them for years and years. Now marketing runs them. They're going fine, but there's little details that are missed because they didn't think about them. It was just at one in Boston last week, and we weren't going to validate the parking. There's no way. It's $33. I'll put it on my card. There's no way I'm not validating these folks parking. There was 2 rooms, and there was no coffee in one room, and there's coffee in the other one. So everybody, if they wanted coffee, had to go walk down. Little mini things like that. That I had to take notes, and they approve it. We wound up taking care of the validating the parking, but they just hadn't thought of it. It wasn't that they were being cheap. They hadn't thought of it, and they hadn't set it up. So
yeah.
little attention to detail.
And even to that point, the way this is getting structured is more of a working conference, schoolroom type tables, because these are owners of businesses, and their business is not stopping because they're sitting there. And I've put in enough buffer in the schedule that if they want to be able to, they have enough time to go answer emails. They have enough time to be able to go out and take a phone call if they need to. So it was really a thought process to be cognizant of what our clients want, but also education and spacing wise. And to your point about the valet, it's I've spent most of my time at the contract negotiating that type of stuff, like resort fees and things like that. So that took up most of my time, to be honest with you. And we're finally past that, and I couldn't be happier about that.
That stuff is like nails against a chalkboard for me, all that stuff, but you got to do it.
Right. Like I said, there will be an event planner next year. So
it's worth the money. Yeah.
Absolutely.
John, I would tell you also, Michael kind of touched on it when he said, make sure you have someone there that can herd cats. Make sure there's some presence on stage that is keeping it tied together and keeping that centralized theme to what you want to do going. Because when you go vendor to vendor, a lot changes. And even though you've talked about what they're going to say and what they're going to talk about, remember it's your company. Remember something has to tie it back to your company. And almost think of it as an MC. Someone needs to MC this whole thing, right? And they might be on stage with a microphone saying, let's get back in. But there needs to be 2 people from your company walking around saying, hey, we're ready, let's get back in, right? So that person can still be that centralized figure of keeping everything together.
Yeah, and that's we do have a PR guy that works for us, and so he's going to be helping working with the topics, but also keeping them on task, keeping track of the time to make sure that, again, like if we let some of these people just talk, they will talk for hours if you let them. So we got to keep them on schedule. Yeah, but that's, to your point, Steve, that's very good. That's, again, wearing a lot of different hats for this. I was at one point thinking I was going to do that, but as I'm getting into this, I'm going to be the person that's not even going to be able to enjoy the event, and I'm going to be the one running around making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, which is fine. I'm okay with that as long as it goes off. I'm not expecting 100% success. If I can get like 85, 90% success, I'd be a pretty happy person.
I was actually going to recommend that to you, to not, since you are the one doing the bulk of the organization, you don't want to be the MC, because you want to be putting out small little fires that are 100% going to come up.
And always if you're doing a summit like this, just make sure that the food is fantastic and that people are talking about the food, right? There's shows or in events that I've been to where the event was okay, but the food was so good. That was like the talk of the town. I can't believe the food is so great. It was, and even if they're talking about the food and not necessarily the event, it's still talking about the event at the end of the day. And they're going to share that. Like, yeah, I went to this thing for this MSP, and the food was great. Yeah, it was just amazing. And that definitely goes a long way. You know, if you look at Datto in our history, I mean, one year for DattoCon, we served turkey bacon instead of regular bacon, and we still like get chastised for that to this day. And it's like 6 years ago. All for turkey bacon.
That might have been the end of me going to a conference if I was eating.
This is it. That's right. Yeah, but good food puts you in a good mood. So,
but it's a funny thing because Jason, that has become fodder for conversation for years. Mm-hmm. Positive too, right? Because you guys went out of your way as a company to make sure moving forward that there wasn't just turkey bacon, it was special bacon, right? And Kevin, you understand where this comes from when I say, think about the bacon, right? It's at our peer group meetings, you guys all know, everyone talks about the bacon where we go, right? Just think about finding that one thing to make people talk about it all the time. There's a couple of questions out there, Michael.
All right, yeah. Is there a best way to sequence which topic to speak on? I think that has to do with the audience of who you're speaking to and what you're trying to convey. Are you selling a particular product, or are you just selling, yourself, your services as a whole? So, in terms of the sequence, a lot of times, especially when we do virtual stuff, we do line it up as a campaign and try to tell a story. So we might say, first one's going to be about ransomware. We're going to do a 20-minute webinar this month. Next month, we're going to talk about continuity of operations. Then we're going to talk about SaaS protection. Then we're going to talk about how this all fits in. So there's a story to be told. So I guess, I don't know if Jason, you could answer that better, but I would say the best way to sequence which topic would be kind of dependent on the audience.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And where do you get speakers to actually come to a venue? So on the speaker side of things, there's a couple of things. I mean, obviously our team comes out and does a lot of them. More and more vendors are putting together a marketing development fund program that can come out and speak. So there's that. But a lot of the governmental agencies, I'm going to be in Atlanta next week doing a presentation with an FBI agent. That came from the partner just reaching out to the local FBI office. It is part of their MO to go out and do educational presentations. They can't share their slides. They can't personally endorse you, but I could tell you every time they talk, they're essentially just screaming to the audience, you got to work with a managed service provider. It's like you hired them, but they won't say you specifically. I know a lot of state organizations. In Jersey's got NJ Kick. They will send people. It's just a form you fill out, and they will send people out. Any cybersecurity insurance agent will come out and speak because they got to sell their, they got a quota to hit, and there's so many companies that are uninsurable right now. The ones that are insurable, the ones that are working with you guys. So they want to meet your clients. They also there's a lead sharing ability there. Well, they'll bring their clients, you bring your clients. So there's that, and they tell really good stories and scare people into saying, I'm not even insurable. That should scare me. So those are the kind of ways. I would avoid the speakers that make you pay for them. I have never seen one that they've paid. I've seen some former FBI agents do the circuit, and they're pretty good. But the cyber public speakers, I haven't found one that I thought was worth the $5,000 that they asked for, whatever it is. I don't know. Jay, has anybody blown you away? Former FBI agents that are now doing as a consultant basis, sure, they're usually pretty good.
Professors sometimes will do it as well. But yeah, me personally, there's enough free resources out there that I wouldn't pay any of these people to do it. And like you said, cyber, like there's I went to one event. I think I went with you. I think it was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where we there was the MSP up there on the panel. It was also a lawyer, and then it was the insurance person, and they all pretty much tackled the same like subject, but it did it from different from different angles, right? The lawyer speaking about the legal side, right? What are your ramifications of being attacked? The insurance person was talking about you as a MSP, what things that you, or was it, I'm sorry, you as a small business, like, like how are you insured, right? How does this really work? It kind of like, dismissing some of the rumors and theories in terms of how it works. And then the MSP was there just talking about how they play a part in that role. So it was really cool to see the different people be able to talk, and everybody has a benefit, right? Everybody's gonna, get people's information. They're gonna be able to reach out. People are gonna be reaching out to them. So it's like it's a symbiotic relationship where everybody's working together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that are willing to come out. CISOs from community banks, I've done presentations with them. This is a good follow-up question. Since it depends on audience, how do you get that info on the audience so your topics match? I always ask for a survey of tell me what you want to learn about. I do it on every single one of my end user webinars, and then we tailor it from that. And sometimes they won't answer it, but I would always do that ahead of time. Part of the registration is, hey, we want to make sure this is an event that makes sense for you, that you're going to get something out of. Tell me what you want to touch upon, and then you'll see the common themes. I still, for the most part, it's they'll just say something broad like cybersecurity or cyber resiliency or ransomware, those type of things. So yeah, the other piece is, anyone that has experienced a breach, it would ideally, if you can get a user testimonial to go up there. Now, a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that, but if they are, there's nothing better than that from somebody saying, hey, this my MSP saved my bacon. See how I slid down there? By doing X, Y, and Z. Now, even if they don't want to do a formal testimonial, having them as champions in the room helps a lot too. They might just raise their hand and ask a question and say, remember when you did X, Y, and Z? So I always encourage, even if your goal is to bring on net new partners, have your champions in the room, because they're having conversations at lunch and they're having conversations. So that's helpful. I know we went a little bit over time.
We're good.
We're good? All right.
Yeah, we're fine. Someone's asking one more. Let's hit it, Mike, before we.
Yep. So you're saying to get speakers, call some colleges. Yeah, I mean, they love speaking, and they're typically good speakers, and they do carry some weight, so yeah, they will come out and speak. We've seen it, you'd think like, why would they come up? But not a lot of MSPs are doing that. So, they want to go out and speak and be experts on a matter, and you'd be surprised. The reason why, FBI agents are available is because not enough MSPs are asking for them. This is the second one I've done with this particular partner. They've got an FBI agent in different markets, and it's just by a phone call. Something special.
You have to remember that a lot of times these people who you can get to speak, they want to build up their resume, right? They want to be this cybersecurity expert. They want to be, renowned and known for giving these presentations. So, they'll jump at the ability to do a lot of times. So
we do have a FBI agent coming to cybercrime division coming to our conference.
Yeah, and if you just call the local FBI office in any community and tell them you're looking for someone to come talk about cyber security or cyber crimes, they'll point you to the right place.
Yeah. Yep. Some of the local branches seem to be more like Houston. They'll say yes, like every time. Atlanta, this is the second time I've done it with this particular agent. Philadelphia is very accommodating. But yeah, just call them up. If it works for their calendar, they will do it, and they're good. They know they've had this down pat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mike, excellent job. Jason as well. Fantastic job for both of you. I love the collaboration between the two of you. It's almost like you've worked together before.
Almost like I have the best boss in the world.
That's it. Put that in the meeting minutes too.